The United States of America is ready to send American troops to defend Ukraine in the event of new Russian aggression, and European countries are preparing to send multinational forces to Ukraine. Despite all the objections from the Russians, the United States and Europe have finally presented their security guarantees today. And there's something to talk about here. In particular, Donald Trump confirmed that the United States will provide Ukraine with security guarantees, which must be approved by the United States Congress, and they will specifically include the deployment of troops, although there are certain nuances here. The Europeans, on the other hand, are actually ready to support the Ukrainian army of 800,000 soldiers and, if necessary, are prepared to send their own troops for operations on the territory of Ukraine. In addition, the Europeans promise not to give in to the Russians' hostility. The frozen assets in Europe will remain until the Kremlin pays reparations and Ukraine will eventually be accepted into the European Union. As part of the security guarantees, at the same time, the United States takes on the role of monitoring compliance with the ceasefire. But all such security guarantees, no matter how impressive they sound or how strong they look on paper, come with their own price. During talks with Volodymyr Zelensky in Berlin, American diplomats offered Ukraine security guarantees similar to NATO's Article 5. In the event that Kyiv agrees to make concessions to Putin and withdraw Ukrainian troops from the entire Donbas. My name is Alexei Pechi. Let's discuss this topic together, but before we start, I ask you to subscribe to the channel, like this episode, and be sure to leave a detailed comment under this video. Subscribe to my Telegram channel Peachy News, the link is in this video's description. There we publish breaking news as it comes in. So finally, details have emerged about what exactly the security guarantees for Ukraine will be after the war ends. The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, announced the agreements reached with the United States and Europe on security guarantees in the spirit of Article 5 of the NATO Charter on Collective Defense. Next is his quote. We are counting on 5 documents, some of them about security guarantees, legal, politically binding, meaning voting and approval by the United States Congress. Where Article 5 exists, like in NATO, and there are agreements on paper, security guarantees really look strong. I discussed this issue and the next steps with United States President Donald Trump. I think that when we finalize the documents or get close to their final version, we will meet with him, that is, with Trump. Trump said yesterday that security guarantees are still being worked on and that Ukraine has already lost territories. That's why the point now is to prevent a new war. Well, I mean, it's clear that it's definitely not going to be possible to get the territories back anytime soon. That's a quote from Trump. They've already lost the territory, to be honest. I mean, the territories are already lost. But as for security guarantees, we're working together with Europe. Europe will be a big part of this, and we're working on security guarantees so that the war doesn't start again. And now Volodymyr Zelensky and the Chancellor of Germany, Friedrich Merz, have already stated that the United States is preparing guarantees. Exactly those kinds. Just like Article 5 of the NATO Charter, according to Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty, all NATO countries commit to treating an attack on one of them as an attack on all and to provide assistance to the victim of aggression. In particular, it should be about military assistance. And here it's very important to be attentive because there's a lot of talk about Article 5 of the NATO Charter that Ukraine will receive the same guarantees and so on and so on. But the thing is, the main principle of NATO's collective security is often perceived as if, in the event of military aggression against one NATO country, all the other NATO countries are obliged to enter the war on its side, on the side of the victim of the war. But that's not entirely true. All NATO countries are obliged to help, but each country chooses the type of assistance it provides on its own. And here I'll just quote Article 5 of the NATO Charter, which is talked about so much, and it goes like this, quote, "The contracting parties agree that an armed attack against one or more of them in Europe or North America shall be considered an attack against them all. And therefore, they agree that in the event such an armed attack occurs, each of them, in the exercise of the right to individual or collective self-defense, recognized by Article 51 of the Charter of the United Nations, will assist the contracting parties subjected to such an attack by immediately taking such individual or joint action as it deems necessary." including the use of armed force with the aim of restoring and subsequently maintaining the security of the North Atlantic region. Well, I think you all heard it clearly, including the use of armed force, and here the most important phrase is do whatever it deems necessary, including the use of armed force. But I should note that we still don't know for sure, 100%, how exactly this paragraph in the guarantees for Ukraine will be worded. Well, maybe Ukraine did manage to secure more specifics for itself. But what is certain is that the Trump administration is once again pushing Ukraine and Zelensky to make a decision today, and in no other way. The publication Political Rights Today, the Trump stated his offer is only valid for a few days, and if Ukraine does not agree to accept the peace plan, the guarantees will be withdrawn. But there is definitely no need to rush here. Well, first of all, I was surprised by the statement of Volodymyr Zelensky, who said openly today that Ukraine still has not discussed the duration of the agreement with the Americans. Security guarantees, quote, "It's hard to say for how many years the security guarantees will last. We haven't discussed this yet, whether certain guarantees will be limited by a specific number of years or not. The only thing that was very important for us was that it should be voted on in Congress, although we all understand that this is Russia and it is the aggressor. Will certain guarantees stop them in the future? Of course, we don't know for sure. That's why we want to have guarantees similar to Article 5. We want to understand how our partners will respond to renewed aggression. Secondly, it became known that American diplomats, during negotiations with Volodymyr Zelensky in Berlin, offered Ukraine security guarantees similar to those of Article 5 of the NATO Charter. But only if Kyiv agrees to a peace deal, which, according to the United States plan, requires the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from Donbas. Ukraine is also being offered to maintain its current army and gain access to certain weapons. But the key issue now concerns handing over territory to Putin, which Ukraine does not agree to. I would like to note that the essence of the American proposal is to create a demilitarized free economic zone in Donbas without Russian troops. The Kremlin supports this idea, but with a caveat. Instead of the regular army, there will be police and the National Guard of Russia there. This doesn't satisfy Ukraine, leaving the territorial issue unresolved. At the same time, Europe will provide its security guarantees to Ukraine. Yesterday, leaders from Germany, France, Poland, Italy, Denmark, Finland, Norway, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, the European Commission, and the European Council presented European security guarantees for Ukraine. So the European plan has only 6 points, but what points they are, as they say? The first is providing long-term and significant support to Ukraine for the development of its armed forces, which should remain at the level of 800,000 personnel in peacetime. Second, well, let's stick with the first one for now. So essentially, the Europeans are saying they are partly ready to support the armed forces of Ukraine. Second, there should be European leadership over the multinational Ukrainian forces formed from contributions by willing countries within the coalition of the willing, with support from the United States. These forces will help restore Ukrainian forces, ensure the security of Ukrainian airspace, and maintain a safer maritime area, including operations on Ukrainian territory. This is a really powerful tool. Basically, we are talking about a multinational military contingent that has the right to operate on Ukrainian territory. The third point is the creation of a mechanism for monitoring and verifying the ceasefire under the leadership of the United States of America, with international participation to provide early warning of any future attacks, attribution and response to violations, as well as a de-escalation mechanism for joint actions to reduce tensions. The fourth point is the creation of a legally binding commitment, taking into account national procedures, to take measures to restore peace and security in the event of a future armed attack. These measures may include the use of armed force, intelligence and logistical support, as well as economic and diplomatic actions. This is specifically about Article 5 of the NATO Charter. That means everyone commits to defending Ukraine, but each decides how exactly they will do it, economically, diplomatically, militarily, through intelligence, logistics, and so on, and so on, and so on. So here you need to clearly understand that this is not a guarantee that everyone will suddenly send their troops to Ukraine. The fifth point is investing in Ukraine's future prosperity, including allocating significant resources for recovery and reconstruction, a mutually beneficial trade agreement, and the necessity for Russia to compensate for the damage caused to Ukraine. This concerns reparations. In this context, Russia's sovereign assets in the European Union have been immobilized and will remain so until Russia pays all reparations. And sixth, it's Ukraine's accession to the European Union, and as soon as possible. So the question now is whether the United States of America will finally be able to put these wild Russians in their place and force them to make a deal. Or will Trump come up with new reasons to put pressure on Ukraine again? I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like, friends. If you found this information interesting and believe the work of this YouTube channel is important and necessary. You can support our work financially with any donation or a paid sponsorship subscription through the links and details provided. The video description ends with "Support the channel Alexei Pechi." Pick any format you prefer. I will be grateful for any support from you. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.